When I bought my Camaro, it had an aftermarket radio in it, which I didn't really like because it was really weird to operate, and I wanted to get an original style factory Delco radio. So I actually had a AM FM radio without cassette in my collection. I put that in, and the left channel was cutting in and out whenever you went over a bump. It was really annoying. So then I'm like, all right, I'll get a cassette radio. I found one on eBay. This one I got for $50. The guy advertised that it worked perfectly, but when I got it, the tape player didn't work, and the bass control doesn't work. And after you play it for about 30 seconds, I believe it's the right channel, just cuts out. It just slowly fades down to no sound pretty much at all. So I was looking on YouTube, everybody's favorite, and I see that, it is possible to take these apart and fix them. So this is something I've never done before. So I'm going to attempt to take this apart, check for any corrosion on the circuit boards here, or any broken wires, or if I don't find anything, it seems like you can replace capacitors, and that brings the radio back to life. So we're going to get started. I really have nothing to lose because this was basically useless anyway, so even if I screw it up, it's not the end of the world. I also have another radio, pretty much identical, with a different face, with pretty much the same problems as this one. So maybe out of the two of them, I could get one good working radio. That would be nice. So I found this site, PCBisolation.com, I believe. So he was basically saying the capacitors, this is the audio amp board, capacitors C1 through C9, which are marked on here, are the most important to replace. So those are the ones I ordered, and those are the ones I'm going to be removing and replacing. So this is the list of all the caps on the amp board. And again, this site is just really helpful figuring out how to do this, and I will make sure I have the link to this. So yeah, the C1, C2, C3, those were the audio grade ones that I mentioned. I ordered them from a guitar. It was guitarpedalparts.com. I'll put links to all this. And then the others, the 100 UF and the 4.7 UF there, got those from Mauser.com. And I know I said up to C9, but I also did C12 and C13. In total, I spent maybe between $30 and $40 on all of the parts. These things are cheap. You pay as much for shipping as you do for the parts. So I think all said and done, it was around 40 or less. So it turns out to be pretty easy to get the old caps out. So I already took 3 of them out. So what you do is, like, for example, here's another one that's going to have to come out. So on the other side of the board, you can see the little leads right here. You see them sticking through. Like, there's one and there's the other one. So you just take the soldering iron and you just hold it on there for a few seconds, and melts the solder, and then you just grab it from the other side. I've been just grabbing them, or if I can't get a grip on it, I'll just use like a needle nose and just wiggle it out, and it's pretty easy. I haven't tried putting a new one in yet, so that might be a little more tricky, but getting the old ones out is a piece. So I just got this one out, and on the bottom it's covered in goo, like it's been oozing something. I think this is, you know, the problem with these things. They dry up, they leak out, and then they're no good. They don't work. So hopefully the new ones will do the trick. I've got 5 of these to replace. These are the 100 UF 16 volt, the coaxial style. And the new one, they didn't have 16 volt. They had 100 UF 25 volt. I installed one of the new ones. It was pretty easy. Just bent the leads over, put the soldering iron on the hole, and solder melted, pushed it in. That's it. So 1 down, and 4 more of those to go. One other thing to keep in mind is the polarity. There's these little black stripes, and inside of them there's a little negative mark, like a dash. So I believe that means negative, and the arrow's to the right. And on the board there's a circle with a little line sticking out of it. That means negative. So pointing the negative to the circle with the dash. Basically, I'm just putting them back in the way they were. There's this little indentation in it, and all of them were on the opposite side of the circle with the dash. So that's how I'm putting the new ones in. So I've got the 5 100 UF caps done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So next up, I got these 4.7 UF 50 volt, and those are going to replace this one, and this one. You know, the site I was looking at to get the information on this said really replacing all the caps is ideal. I didn't know how hard it was going to be, so I went with the ones where the guy said these are the most important. So that's what I'm working on. If I have to come back and do more, it's not a big deal. I mean, this is actually pretty easy. The hardest part is just everything is so small, and just trying to see all of the tiny little markings and everything. So on these radial style, one side has a stripe, and the stripe coincides with, again, the circle. It's hard to see, but the circle with the little line sticking out of it matches the side with the stripe, which is the negative side for the polarity of the caps. So I'm going to get started on these 3 now. Alright, so I got the 4.7s done. These were a little bit more tricky to remove because, you know, with the radial style, you can sort of loosen up one side, pull it out, and then do the other. With the radials, I'm sorry, these are the axial. The radial style, you gotta kind of get both leads hot so you can pull it out, because you can't really pull one side out at a time. And then when I put them back in, I needed to add a little solder for these, so I have this really thin gauge solder, and this was one example. I just had to add a little dab to that, to each lead. And yeah, so those are done. So that's this one, and this one. I do want to also replace these three here. I forget what they are, but these green ones, these are spec'd to be audio grade capacitors, not just regular electrolytic. So I had to order them from a guitar store. They'll be coming in a couple of days, and then I'm going to replace those three, and then I'm going to start putting this thing back together, which might be the hardest thing of all here. Is so many different things you got to line up, and tons of screws, and also the tape player wasn't working. While I have this out, I should probably, this belt looks very loose, should try to get a belt and replace the drive belt on the tape deck. We'll see what happens. See if we can make a working radio out of this. If we can, you know, I have some other broken radios, and you know, get those going too for spares, or I could even sell them, I guess. So when I get the 3 audio grades. So everything was going really well with this project until I got to these 3 1UF audio grade caps. Now, you know, I got these in, no problem. The other 3 black ones. When I was trying to remove these from the board, I was, you know, doing like I did with the others, heating up the solder on the underside, trying to pull these out. And what was happening was the can came out, but then the leads remained. That might be one of them. The leads remained stuck in the board, and I was really, you know, having to heat it up a lot. And what happened was I ended up melting away, I guess, the metal part. So then when I tried to put the new ones in and solder them in, there was nothing to solder to, and it just wasn't working. So it's hard to see. So I guess, I don't know if you can see it, but it looks like kind of a mess now. What I ended up doing was making little jumpers. There's one right there. There's one right there. And that's on the top, you can see. This one right there. I used some wire. And this one I just looped around here. Basically what I did was, because the part of the board that made the contact was burnt away, so then I had to trace, you know, the little lines back to where they terminated. So in the case of this one, you know, it took a path to this point, so that was gone. I had to jump it, run like that. So anyway, that was the gist of it. Spent a lot of hours. I got them in, they're all connected. You know, I don't have too much faith that this is all gonna work. Like I said, I've never done this before. I don't really know what I'm doing. I wouldn't follow my lead if I were you. But, you know, we'll put it back together and we'll see what happens. This is not something I would be looking to do, you know, over and over. But, you know, maybe with some practice I would get better at it. I don't know. So now we're going to see how tricky it is to get this all back together. Test it out. So this is the general direction of where everything needs to go back together. The amp board is on the left side, and then these two other boards, you can't really mess it up. They only go one way. You can just really see by how the ribbon connectors are attached. So now it's just a matter of going through all the little different screws and getting them back where they belong. All right, so it's been another couple of months. I had to put this down, step away from it. It was making me nuts. I couldn't get, all I could get was a click of sound. I couldn't get any sound out of the radio. I had it, you know, I went over all my connections, like triple checked everything. Everything was installed and connected to the proper places, and I fixed the ribbon cable that had broken off, resoldered every wire, and still nothing. It was partially assembled, so then I just had this thought that it was like, I wonder if, you know, the whole box needs to be back together. You know, maybe these metal plates actually are connections, ground, whatever. So I decided to just put it all back together, see what happened. I did have to make a modification because those 3 caps, those audio grade caps that I had changed out, didn't even realize at the time they were taller than the original ones, and I had to make a little relief hole because this heatsink, you know, needs to be attached to the two amp ICs or amps, whatever they're called. So kind of brute, and you know, wouldn't recommend it, but drilled a little relief hole, got this on, got everything back together, wired it up, and oh, that's weird. Wasn't doing that a minute ago. Oh, well, the wires fell off. Okay, that's why. So now turn it on. It's AM. I am actually getting sound out of the front channels, left, right. I have an antenna here, but I'm in my basement. So when I hit scan, it's not picking up anything. But it's playing static, which is, you know, way more than it was before, where it was just a click and then nothing. So I have a little bit more hope that this is actually working now. The rear channels need to be tested for sound, and I don't even remember. I think it was the right channel that would die on this. I think it was front and rear. You know, you would play the radio for a few minutes and then the right channel would just fade out to nothing. So I'm gonna let it play for a little while. Maybe I'll bring my whole setup. I got this extra battery. I might have to bring the whole setup up above ground. See if I can actually pull in a radio station. Put the tape player back in. I had bought a new belt for it, but you know, one thing at a time. I figured I'm not gonna mess around with that if the radio doesn't work. So if the radio actually works, it's not that bad. I can take the tape player out of the bottom without having to take the whole thing apart. Alright, so here's the deal. I wired up the 2 rear channels, left and right. It's been playing for about 10 minutes. It's fine. I don't know what the deal is with this antenna. I don't know if it's a good antenna or not. What I do know is that my spare radio here, this is a known good working radio I've had in a car. If I wire this up the same way, I get the same exact static. So I don't know if this antenna needs to be grounded or if there's something wrong with it or what's going on, but I'm gonna call this good as far as the amp repair. Because like I said before, the right channel would cut out after a very short time of playing it, so all the channels are equally putting out static. So I think the amp board is fixed at this point, And as far as fixing the tape deck, I will do that in a separate video. So please do me a favor and drop a comment, like, subscribe. All this stuff helps my channel out immensely, and it's free and easy to do. So thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.